Welcome to the Easter edition of the Warrior Pulse podcast. This is actually episode 22.5. Happy Easter, everybody. Hope you had a great day, enjoyed some ham, and spending time with family, having a great church service about the He is risen and eating colorful eggs and all that good stuff that goes along with Easter. Today, I am excited to have David Andrews, who is a longtime coach here at Weber, who's worked with track and field. He's got a cool story about track and field, how he got into it, and also a little bit of football mix thrown in. So, David, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're glad you're here. Glad you could get away from Frostproof. By the way, David is working with 6th and 7th graders teaching reading at Frostproof Middle School. So if you thought your life was hard, welcome to his. For all of us that have kids, we know what those 6th and 7th graders are like. So
Yes,
how are you enjoying Frostproof?
Man, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Loving the community, the family atmosphere, and man, 6th and 7th grade, it's nonstop free comedy. So yeah, I'm loving it. It's beautiful up there.
Awesome. Let's get a little bit into your origin story, talking about where you came from to where you are now. You went to UMass Dartmouth and you graduated in 1996 with your BA in English Drama and Film Studio. So I'm going to take a time out for a moment and say, how does someone who's involved in track and field and football decide they're going to study drama and film studies?
My mom said I was a character. I don't know, I just had a lot of family and friends, and I think it was senior year in high school, to pick up an extra credit. There was a chorus and an acting thing going on, and I was like, you know what, I want to do that. Never actually did it, but I still had that desire. So when I went to college, I did a lot of film study, got part of the theater there, and did a lot of stage, and I entered an ad over the summertime trying to get some money to get back to school. And man, first time my agent sent me on a movie, and I went on set and fell in love, and the bug bit me, and it's just been a part of me. But you know, track and field and football it's been my passion and my love. And it just so happened that I was a better coach at track than football.
All right, so let's carry this film and drama out a little bit further. Did you, besides you had an agent, how far did you carry that, and when did you realize there's more to life than just going to casting calls?
Ooh, that's good. Wow. Well, prior to becoming a Christian, the world kind of revolved around me, and I kind of hit a lot of different things. So the stage really gave me that out to kind of get away from reality, as it were, and I can put myself into different characters. But I got into it. I did movies, commercials, lots of theater. Had a lot of friends that got into acting and really made it. Pooch Hall is one of them, who was on The Game, and then started with Charles S. Dutton, and man, he's just done so much. Super proud of him. And Marlon Grace is another one that comes to mind. But I wanted to pursue that, and I actually entered into a acting contest where 98% of the people go on to get offers and star, and I won. It was an international competition. I won the acting, and I also won the singing. So I had agents calling and different things, Milan and Toronto and things of that nature, but I'm kind of glad I didn't go because I really wasn't in the right mindset for it, and I don't think I had, just the strength to keep going into that, and now in hindsight, I know now that God had another plan for me. I didn't know it at that time, but you can just see his thumbprint and where people were going into the film and making it, and I'm going, man, I was there. How come I'm not? There were reasons. There were different choices that I made. But man, I still love acting. Still love singing.
Okay, Okay, we're not going to make you sing today.
Good.
But that doesn't mean there won't be an encore presentation of some point coming back on the Warrior Pulse and hitting a couple tunes. But really what I want to know is, you studied it, you were a part of it,
Yes.
Your life went a different direction. Is there an appreciation today for the arts, and is it something that's still important to you?
Yes, definitely. I appreciate everything that it has to offer. Being able to look at a script or looking at a scene, which is called the mise en scène, right? So freeze frame it, I can see everything that's in that picture, what the director's looking at, the lighting. I just really fell in love with that. And I kind of look at that as like in business with logistics and how everything sets up, and then taking another step back and looking at life and going, wow, I understand now that critical thinking and being able to correspond with folks. So it really transcends not just on the stage, but in life. They say it's a mimic of life, right? Kind of like college. Yeah. It's a microcosm of it, right? But you can kind of play through the different scenarios. So I mean, wow, that's a great question, and how that just reflected in my life. It's really propelled me forward to kind of put myself in other people's shoes. Not as a role of being fake, but being able to understand who they are. And when I got into coaching, it was kind of the same thing. I could look at people, or teaching, I could look at them and say, okay, I understand you have a backstory. But I also have to have that relationship with you in order to really gravitate and know how to coach you or how to talk to you and really try to pull the best out of you. So yeah, I give a lot of credit to what I learned in film study, just really looking between the lines.
I think that's part of the big, well, first of all, I love these podcasts because I have a list of things I want to cover, and then an answer gets given and it throws off everything and my brain starts going. So one, film study.
Yeah.
Well, anytime you have study attached to anything, athletic study, anything, you're diving into those pieces. And some of the business people that I follow, they talk about, instead of problem solving, the way they've created their life is it's a puzzle.
Mm.
Well, you just talked about, you freeze frame the scene, you can see it. So my question is, how did you turn the study of film and drama into this athletic part?
Wow, that's good. Studying the film, like I said, it allowed me to really look deeper than just the surface. It's not just enough to introduce this character, but where did this character come from? What makes this character tick? What's the good and the bad of that person? And how do they fit into that scene? So while developing that for my own characters, and then really being transformed to where I am that character. And then looking into it and seeing, okay, wow, there's something more than just this athlete. When I'm recruiting them, I tell them I'm looking beyond them. I'm looking at their grandchildren, because that little tiny molecule in their life that I get to be a part of, I can either positively or negatively affect that. So I have to take what I've learned there and apply it to this situation and go, whatever decisions you're making right now, that's going to affect and have that ripple down for generations. So I take that very seriously, and so I look at that person's backstory, if you will, and just really try to connect with them on a personal level and say, okay, how does that puzzle fit? So for me, it was natural. I mean, I had a guy who came in as a volunteer coach in high school, and he's the one who really made me fall in love with track and field. Love football. I'm a fanatic about football. But track and field, it was that individual doing the best that they can to help the holistic team to achieve a certain goal that they all have. And I think we as people have kind of that same thing. If I'm working on myself, but I'm looking at Christ first, and He's working on me. Well, man, my team is my wife and my kids. We're gonna be better together. So my team, if I'm bringing that and I'm looking at them individual and helping them pull that out too, those pieces work together for that overall goal. And I think that just really transcends. I think Nick Dodson from Southeastern said it best. It's about relationship, right? So I build that relationship, foster that relationship that transcends here in college. Those 4 years, man, the residual payback is tenfold. And I think that acting part of it really broadens that out to segueing into that track and field, and it just goes even further.
Well, again, we're on section 1 of like 12, but no problem. You talked about that track and field individuals performing at their best to help the overall team, because track and field, swimming, so many of those events that are athletic events that happen in college are actually individual events that are scored as a team.
Right.
As soon as you said track and field, the individual, I thought of the cast of Friends. And then I think of a football team as the Philharmonic Orchestra, as they all have to perform together in order to do well. So that's just as someone who's naive, but thinks of team sports in one way and individuals. And I think of, if we didn't have that full cast of Friends, they wouldn't have been as good as they were.
Right.
They would have individually been good, but not as a whole. And then the Philharmonic Orchestra, even if we're missing that triangle player, something's missing from that group. And if you don't have a good quarterback or a good kicker, the football team is going to fail. Not only did you get a degree from UMass Dartmouth, you also came to Weber.
Yes.
And you also got another degree in business.
Yes.
And then MBA as well. And why was the educational component, I know, I'm going to go ahead and knock this out. For a lot of us here at Weber, there is a convenience factor to getting degrees. But why is that accessibility to a degree, getting the degree, important?
I think, man, we're always learning, right? And for me, it was twofold. I always had this desire to work towards a PhD. I was told that I wasn't smart enough to go to college. I should work with my hands. And to be honest, probably wasn't ready.
You are a throwing coach.
I am.
So you are working with your hands. There you go. You got that.
That's good. And I use my hands when I talk a lot too. But I kind of took that to heart. And it was a guidance counselor who was like, look, you might as well just join the military because pretty much not smart enough to go to college. And I wasn't applying myself. But once that light came on, I'm like, yes, I can do this. And it was a push, and I didn't look at it as a push at the time. But man, I ended up going to college, and I liked academia better in college than I did in high school. High school, I was all about sports. I'm going to play in the NFL. I was 5'5". I'm not going to the NFL. I'm going to get into the Olympics. I was only running 10.6 as a sophomore in the 100. I'm not going to the Olympics. But I ended up somehow, by the grace of God, getting into UMass Dartmouth. And I floundered. Man, I had a 0.01 first semester. They told me, you got to go.
No way.
0.01. You got to be talented to get that.
Very talented. That's a great effort not trying.
Right. So what I do now is, once I fell in love with it and was like, I get it, and I had professors that really held me to the torch. I get it. Knowledge brings power, and I think Solomon was really searching for that, and I just kind of think about that and the things that he was thinking about, being the wisest person who ever lived. Not that I'm comparing myself.
It's all right.
But yeah. But the fact that, man, it opens up so much more for us to have that knowledge on different levels. I mean, math that's like horrible to me. But I got a business degree, and I'm like, and I have an MBA. That's crazy. I can now relate to these kids, because while I'm coaching these college students, I'm also going through it at the same time and saying, listen, if I can do it, you can do it. And I have no qualms about letting them know, hey, I had a 0.01, so I know exactly what you're doing, what you didn't do. I've been there, so I can relate to you. but at the same time, nobody can take that from me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nobody can. I can get a brand new car, drive it off the lot. It's already depreciated. You're never ever going to depreciate my education. That's always going to build, and I think that allows me to, one, have confidence in myself, but also help that next person to say, listen, this is important. Here's why.
Well, you have gray hair and I'm losing mine, so sometimes when we talk to the kids, our experiences, and I thought it was so you talked about your 0.01, and I struggle with things, and we want to share those experiences. How do you get the players, the athletes, your students at Frostroof, how do you get them to understand, it doesn't matter that I walked uphill both ways back in, before the wooden wheel was invented. How do you get them to understand that I get you, I understand? Because I feel for a lot of coaches, that's the hardest thing. You just don't understand us.
Right.
We actually do, and yes, we're older, but it's the same today as it was back then. It's just all digital now. Right. So how do you get those points across and get your story out there so that kids are like, oh, Coach Andrews, he understands me.
Just being real, being authentic with them, being consistent. I don't try to make a grandiose thing. I'm not better than anybody. In fact, I think they're smarter than I am. A lot of them came in, I think of Choice Scapa. Came in smart as a whip, understood that, man, I need X amount of money, I'm going to go get it. And to see where she's grown now, they're way smarter than me, but if I can sit and talk with them and say, hey, I believe in you, I love you, and it's not just lip service, like I'm there, I care about you. That's why I start right off with recruiting. I'm already thinking about your grandchildren. You haven't even thought about your next boyfriend or girlfriend, but I have to think that way. And I'm going to keep you accountable, keep me accountable. When I make a mistake, because I've made plenty in the 11 seasons I've been here, to say, hey, I made a mistake, I'm sorry. I don't know everything. But I'm going to try my best, and you're going to know that you're loved, respected, and wanted here. And that was one of the things that attracted me to Weber. Man, they from day one, it was your dad and Peter Ormsby that hired me.
That bald-headed triathlete.
Yeah. He knew not what he was doing when he hired me.
We love him.
But they made me feel like family here. And, and that's the same thing that I want to do. It's like, it's funny, like the kids at the 6th and 7th graders, man, I'm like, hey, love you guys. But as they're walking out the door, hey, you had a bad day today. But, we can have a better day tomorrow. I love you.
Yeah.
Even after I wrote them up.
I think that's huge. You touched on 3 things, and we'll go on and we'll move forward just so we can get through, because I could sit and talk to you. I'm so engrossed. 1, Joyce Caba, my boss, one of my bosses here, and the reason that there is the Warrior Pulse podcast. Yeah. So like that initiative, that drive, shout out to Joyce sitting in the corner over there. 2, the love factor. And honestly, it's hard dealing with so many players and that love, especially I deal with it a lot on the international side. Like, hey guys, I really care about you. No, you're here to play the sport for me, but really, I want to know more about what's going on down the road.
Right.
And then lastly, just a shout out, because I love the guy, Pete Ormsby. He was an awesome coach. UNC Pembroke, congratulations on all your success up there in the D2 world. And stay ball-headed and keep pedaling that daggum bicycle. But another thing I want to touch on, because it's not something that a lot of coaches do. You went from being a head coach. You've been at Weber now for 11 seasons. Yeah. You went from being the head coach to making a career decision for you and stepping back and becoming the assistant. How hard was that, or was it one of those, this is no problem at all? And I really don't know.
Right. It's kind of both. Being a head coach, I've always wanted to be a head coach, and when they gave me that opportunity, it was awesome. It was an answer to prayer, and had something so much more than we even expected, my wife and I. But making that decision, I thought it was time. I just thought that, man, if we got somebody else, and I saw the direction that the conference was going, direction that we were going, I'm like, man, maybe it's about time that somebody new comes in and can now push it even further. My predecessor, Doc Ornsby, amazing. I mean, I think he's one of the most brilliant minds in our time in this world. And he taught me along the way and showed me some things and allowed me to express my creativity in track and field and really set me up well. And I wanted to do the same thing, and I think Coach Weiscarver is coming in and going to do just a fabulous job. And there's a connection there because he used to work with Coach Owens.
Okay.
So having that new blood, new mindset, that young guy who can get out there and just go and I don't know if you know, but I'm getting a little older with the gray hair.
Yeah,
turning 50 next month.
It happens to us. I'm right behind you. Right behind you.
So the other factor was I lost a lot, right? So my family sacrificed for me 11 years. And in that time, I missed first steps, first words, because I'm out there, recruiting or at a meet. I remember a couple of times where an incident happened with my son, and I'm like, man, I'm in Mississippi. That was really hard. So now that my family's in this new chapter, my daughter is at USF now, graduated with her AS from here. My son is now, in a school by himself. My youngest daughter is now in 6th grade. So there was a lot of new chapters. And I felt at this moment, this time, after a lot of prayer and confirmation that this was definitely the time. Because we questioned and talked about it a number of times, but it wasn't that time. But when God opens the door and tells you to go, you go. And you're better for it. So I think both the program is even better, and obviously home life is awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. That normal schedule's amazing. Huh?
Oh yeah.
Speaking of your relationship with Christ and athletics, you are a big part of the Weber FCA. How where did the relationship with God, and how did you tie that into athletics? Because athletics, a lot of us pray, for something, but where did that true relationship with Christ and athletics, how did that get formed?
For me, it was sports has always been there, and I think maybe even at one time in my life could have been counted as an idol, which is kind of scary to think about. Mm-hmm. But when I truly gave my life to Christ, I had moved from Massachusetts, was living down here already, and like a little kid in a storm, excuse me one second.
No problem.
It's my wife. Can you, speaking of family,
hey,
can you let me know that?
Family is priority. We're all good.
But I went to bed, and I remember being a little kid and just hearing this voice, "You don't come to my house. You don't know who I am." And I had been in the church, grew up in the church, but I was like, man, I really don't know who you are. But I can quote scripture, I sang, but I didn't know who he was. And then he just feeling the love of the Father and knowing who he was really showed me who I was in him, right? And having that love and knowing who Christ is, and just following him just made athletics so much easier, because there was a reason why I was here, right? My wife and I talked about that, and I was like, God made this happen. If you remembered, this was said, and man, here he is. Doors were open. I was perfectly fine at Osceola High School and coaching and teaching there, but this opened up. And I remember coming back from Frostproof from a practice and hearing all the young men and women talking and coming back here to campus, my first year, and going, this is why. And hearing kids go, hey coach, I'm dealing with this. Coach, what do you think about that? Coach, do you think God's real? And having that, and then having kids from, just different backgrounds asking me questions, and then some even giving their lives after track or after practice. I looked at my wife and I said, babe, this is why he had us here. This is a reason. And then the FCA I don't have time. Coach Chuck was here. And then, former athletic director Darren Ritchie said, hey, you need to get off the, get off the sideline, get in the game. And I'm like, I know. But man, what a beautiful tie that was.
Yeah.
And just to see what everybody's done with it is amazing.
That's awesome. That, speaking of, it's not an interruption. Your wife is a part of your life, and so are your 3 children.
Yeah.
And what's funny is when you're a coach, whether it's high school, college, whatever, all of your players are your kids as well. And your wife is also, Angel is an alumni of Weber as well. And one of your daughters is an alumni, and who knows what's going to happen with the other 2, but everybody's doing their thing. And so that Weber family, and what you talk about is, Weber is basically not a religious affiliated school, but the FCA program here at Weber is really big and strong. And it's kind of cool to see that, we're not all heathens. I know our brethren across the lake would like to think that we're all heathens, but really we're not. We just have this freedom of choice, and a lot of the athletes have chosen that route. Mm-hmm. Let's actually get into some of your accomplishments. You've coached 18 All-Americans. Is there anyone that sticks out particular for you?
Aubrey Smith. He and I laughed because he and I had a conversation after he got back from the Olympics. And I was like, dude, I was afraid to coach you. He was like, what? I was afraid of you. You came walking in. I didn't even know you. I said, man, you had me so nervous. Because I coached kids from a certain starting point and gotten them pretty good. But walking into a situation where this kid already had the Canadian national record, and I knew he was Olympic material, and I'm like, wow, I've never done that before. He goes, Coach, you never showed it. Just some of the things that watching him grow up as a young man really brings to mind. Recently, Dakari Hill comes to mind, a young man who some never gave a chance, never even looked at him. And he came here and was probably the most decorated All-American that we've ever had. And I think he's destined for greatness. Jordan Clark. He and I battled and butted heads for 2 years, but to see the maturation of that young man who put USA on his chest, that was phenomenal. Man, there's young ladies like Alexis Frazier coming in. I knew who she was before even getting here, and the things that she has done. There's countless others that I just have an affinity for all of them. Yeah. But those kind of come to mind right away.
So you talk about button heads. I think as a coach, those are some of the greatest moments. I never had a problem butting heads. I thought that was actually that means you have a spine. You might think yours is better, but listen. And the fact that your Olympian says you just didn't know. It's got to be, it doesn't make you feel smaller. It makes you realize I haven't been pushing myself hard enough. Mm-hmm. It's there. Right. When someone that's that strong tells you, yes, you can. Did that change your coaching game at all? When you're now working with someone that's competing, like you said, the flag on their chest, does that change the way you coach the rest of them?
I coach them all the same.
Okay.
In that, I don't care if you have no business on the team, or you're that All-American coming in. I'm gonna treat you the same, and I'm gonna push you the same because you can all grow and get better. There's always something that you can do, and it's my job to really try to pull that out of you. The one thing that it does do for me, it gives me kind of some confidence too in my ability. But it also made me hungrier to learn more and to sit under the foot of guys like Harless Metters and Ken Harding, and some of those great guys that I can learn and glean from, so that way I can give more to these kids, because they're believing it now. And that goes back to caring about them and knowing that, hey, no, you can do this. And I'm going to be right here. I don't care if you hate me right now. Yeah. But at the end, you're going to be like, man, I really did it. I'm going, yeah, you did it. I didn't do it. You did that.
I was the prod.
Yeah. All I did was let you know that. Yeah, I believe in you, and you believe in you now. And man, that in essence is the thing that drives the coaching for me. Just watching that maturation, knowing that, man, I started off as this clumsy kid, and I grew up as a young man, a young woman, and along the way, I gained a lot, not just on the track, but in life.
I don't know how you feel about stats. I always had a tough time when my athletes were successful. When we succeeded, my team did an outstanding job. When we failed, it was my fault. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say this. You've had 2 athletes compete in the World University Games. I always got jealous of swimming and track because you had so many opportunities to have qualifiers. 59 national NAI qualifiers and 48 champions. That's ridiculous. Like, do you know how long it would take for a tennis coach to have that many award winners? And like, it was always funny to me because like at Florida Southern, we'd have swimmers win 8 All-Americans in one season. I'm like, how do you do that? Yeah. Like, it would take the most the tennis player can get is like 8 total over 4 years. So I know that you give so much credit to the athletes that you work with, but how did you develop that many winners? You have 59 qualifiers for nationals, 48 individual winners. How did you develop those people? How did you know they had it in them? And then how did you get them to understand they had it in them?
That's a great question. I think for me, I just hit on the basics. I don't talk colleges. I'm very plain. I don't even understand it. But I just talk with them, meet them where they are. And like I said, I just believe in them. I'm going to keep pushing you. I'm going to make myself better so that way I can make you better. And just being patient too, because a lot of times you have to have that conversation with them and say, well, what do you think? I need you to grab some ownership on this because it's not enough for me to know it. You have to know it and perform because I'm not out there doing it. But also let them know that I'm right there with them and motivate them. And just kind of sometimes as a coach, you just kind of take a step back and you look at them and you go, yeah, you've got something there.
But how do you get them to see it? Because there's so many times we see the talent, but we can't get them, we can't force them to do it. How do you get that out of them?
Right. Sometimes it's a hard process, but recognize it in that instant, when you're taking film, you're like, oh, you did it. You did that. Look at this. Do you remember what that felt like? Yeah. Remember what that felt like. And then they get excited about it because they're seeing the growth, right? And they know that potential is in there. Sometimes they're just afraid to unlock it, or they don't know how to. So as a coach, I have to keep pushing the envelope, and I have to keep, not allowing them to settle, right? Push them even further. And try different things. Like Dakari, I put the bar up. I remember his first day at practice, I put the bar up past his high school PR. And I was like, let's do it. That was practice day 1. I did it to a couple other kids. The only way you're going to know if you can do it is if you actually make the attempt. Yeah. So if you're afraid to take a shot, you're never going to make the shot.
For sure.
So it's kind of worked, and I just let them know it's not fake. Like, I really see it, and I'm going to be honest with them too. If it's not there, man, that you're not going to make it to nationals probably. But what can you do? Let's be honest about it.
That's huge. That is so wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to take off my mask. That's huge. That is something I have talked to athletes for years about. Is not necessarily are you always going to be the best. You can be your best. And what does that look like? It's still going to be a stretch. And the fact that you just said that, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no, that's good.
That is something that has just pounded me for years of like, it feels like it's such a defeat for an athlete but really they're still going to a place they've never been to.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome. Please continue. Sorry.
And I have to say too, I also stolen from Coach Dave Michael. Man, we had this mantra with our team, RPE, relentless perfect effort, right? And we also stole that from the Henry brothers. But facing the Giants, you know, if I can't control anything but my lane, right? I can't control the weather, I can't control you, but I can control my effort. And if I can get up there and get 100%, man, I just won, right? I don't have to be the fastest, the best, run the longest and everything else. But if I'm doing my best and I've given everything that I can, and I can honestly look at that mirror and go, Coach, I gave everything. Man, I gave everything to myself. I gave everything to the team. Whether that be life, friendships, relationships, school, anything. If I can say I've given a perfect effort, I can't be perfect. Nobody's perfect but Christ. But I gave my perfect effort. I just won.
Yeah.
And there's no way that you can't increase from that and see gain from whether that be PR in this meeting. But there's going to be some hills and valleys. But man, guys, he's the God of hills and valleys.
Yeah.
So he's right there with me even in that. So in those dark times, those dark moments, I'm going to be real enough and honest enough to say, hey, right now, that's not that reality. Let that be that long goal, knowing that we have to be realistic about that. You know, Marcella Solano came in, and I knew that lady was going to be awesome. She was our female thrower, and took a chance. She turned down 5 Division I offers, and then 2 more after she was here. I was like, look, you're just not getting what we needed from here. Let me move you on. She said, no, Coach, I'm staying right here. And when I go to the Olympics, I'm putting Weber on my chest, and I'm going to wear it there. And that told me so much because I told her, I don't know anything about the hammer, but by the time you get here, I'll know enough the basics to fix some things. And she took that chance. And that's another one of those people I'm always going to remember. We had hills and valleys, but man, I remember her sitting in the office, you know, crying for 3 months and pushing herself. And when others are in class or just relaxing, she's out there doing another workout, you know. But to see that, and for others to see that, I think that's kind of what also opens up, because they get to talking to each other, not so much about the coach and the athlete, but the athletes too.
That's awesome. I know that the credit for yourself isn't what you were in this for, but you were named both the NAIA South Region Women's Head Coach of the Year and the South Region Men's Coach of the Year for indoor track and field, which, on a side note, to add a little comedy, we don't have an indoor facility, and we've had success since the Sun Conference in 2016. You were the runner-up that year in the indoor track and field. Just real quick, how hard is it to do an indoor track and field program, to especially go to nationals for something that you can't train for? How hard is that?
Yeah, it's a little hard, especially for Floridians, because they've never seen it. They had one track a long time ago at Florida. But if you weren't fortunate enough to go and compete there, it's a new animal. Yeah. So yeah, we're outside running, and then I bring them inside. Lack of oxygen. They're like, Coach, this is too tight of a turn. Or we get on a bank, and they're like, what is this? So no matter what you do on an outdoor facility, you can never ever get them ready. They just have to do it. Yeah. So yeah, it's a challenge for sure.
I've always, I mean, for years I've wondered that, but it's amazing that we actually have, as a school, had success in the indoor arena outside. But you know, I want to finish up with this 2 things. One, what is your most successful moment as a coach? And it can be something that you achieved as a coach, or something that someone else achieved under your tutelage. And so I want to ask that. I was going to ask what your number 1 pet peeve is, but you're so positive that I'd rather know what the best thing that happened versus pet peeves, because I think we can harp on negative so often, but I want to know the positive.
Man, the most memorable, was the first part of that?
Yeah, the most memorable positive moment that you've had as a coach, whether it involved you as the coach or something that one of your athletes achieved.
Right. Watching them graduate. Watching my athletes graduate. it's even now thinking about it, man. Just watching all of them go through from Malcolm Solomon to Joyce Caba, walking with her NBA. You know, that's 2 plugs for you, Joyce. You know, just watching them, man. Brittany House coming down from New York. You know, just watching them walk across the stage. Gabriel Barron. I mean, it brings so much pride because I've watched them grow. You know, and it's kind of like the father watching his kids.
Yeah.
You know, walk across the stage and seeing them as, you know, snot-nosed freshmen, not knowing anything, and the awkwardness of navigating life and social life, and, you know, let's face it, we're in the middle of the grove, so it's practice and school, and then a sprinkling of social, right? Mm-hmm. And just doing the best that you can while navigating life. And then to see them mature and graduate and go, man, at one point you almost gave up. But wow, you did it. You actually did this thing. And to see how proud they are of themselves. It's funny, like Dr. Wade says every year, we didn't give these degrees, they earned it. And they really do. I've seen the struggles of these kids. It's like, man, that professor, I'm like, I know, I had him too. You know, but man, one year, this, and I guess it goes along with this. My wife and I graduated together with probably 7 of our athletes.
That's cool.
That was awesome to me.
Yeah.
To know that they actually looked and said, wow, Coach really did this. And not only Coach, but man, his wife. And Dr. Wade actually mentioning those who were first time in the family, or you know, faculty that was, and then family of, or married. For that to be mentioned, that just culminated into everything that Weber is and everything that God promised to me. It was just phenomenal. There was so many blessings out of that's got to be, man, right at the top.
Okay, cool. Well, I know this is the Dave Andrews episode, but since we've had the Joyce Caba shout outs a couple times, I'm going to also throw out, if you need any wedding photography or any action shots, Joyce Caba is your photographer of choice here in the Weber family. So look her up, Facebook, social media, hit her on the Weber website. Joyce, there you go, a little shout out. And we're going to finish with this because I think we'll get a pretty good response on this. What does it mean to David Andrews to be a warrior?
To be a warrior is a person that never quits, even when it gets tough, even when everyone else around you is losing their heads and blaming it on you. You still stand and you say, I can do this. But being real enough to know that I can't do it all by myself. It takes family, it takes teammates, it takes a lack of, taking some of that pride that we have sometimes and casting it down to the side, being involved, the good and the bad, just being there, fighting, right to the very end, knowing that on the other side, there's always going to be that sunlight. God's always going to pull you through. No matter if my head is bloody, I'm never going to take a knee. I'm going to play every down. I'm going to run every race like it was my last, as Coach Simpson would say. And I'm going to be a person of my word. That's a warrior, doing what we say we're going to do and doing it to the best of our ability.
Boom. There you have it. 44 minutes of the best of David Andrews. I hope that your sunrise service was spectacular. I hope your Easter eggs taste delicious and your honey baked ham fills up the family. Enjoy your Easter Sunday, and thank you for joining us on the Warrior Pulse episode 22 and a half. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.